Hello and welcome to a special edition of the programme which comes live from the old toll bridge in Shoreham, which became the focus of an enormous wave of grief in the aftermath of the air crash which took place a short distance from here. Today, the pilot, Andy Hill, whose vintage jet crashed onto the A27 and who narrowly escaped death himself, was acquitted on 11 counts of causing death by manslaughter by gross negligence, the 11 men who died here when he was performing a loop manoeuvre in August 2015 during the air show. Well, today the families wept in court when, after an unprecedented criminal trial, the jury agreed with Mr. Hill's explanation that the crash was caused by a cognitive impairment which affected his ability to think. Tonight, he said he was truly sorry. The families say they're devastated and feel let down by the judicial system. Our first report tonight comes from Amanda Acas, who spent the last 7 weeks at the Old Bailey.
It was the day death thundered down from the sky onto one of the busiest roads in Sussex. 11 men's lives engulfed in a fireball which swept along the dual carriageway. Even those watching the vintage jet perform overhead had no time to react when pilot Andy Hill made a series of catastrophic errors. But today he's been cleared of manslaughter. Outside court, he read out the names of all 11 victims.
I'm truly sorry for the part I played in their deaths, and it is they that I will remember for the rest of my life.
Oliver Morris's uncle, Mark Reeves, was one of the victims.
I would like to say a few words on behalf of my family and express our complete devastation at the most surprising non-guilty verdict. It has been a long and complex trial, and we feel that the success of Mr. Hill's defence of cognitive impairment is a worrying precedent and could have far-reaching consequences.
Andy Hill doesn't remember his display at Shoreham, but acknowledged that although it began as planned, at the start of the loop everything went wrong. His speed as the plane pitched up was too slow, by at least 20 knots. He then failed to set the throttle to full power. The plane therefore reached the top of the loop at just 2,800 feet, far too low to be able to pull out of the dive safely. The court heard he should have been at least 1,500 feet higher.
The moment he pulled into the vertical, I literally felt sick. Because in my opinion, it was obvious to me that he was going too slowly to pull such a large aircraft into the vertical.
Pilot Tom Maloney had previously owned that Hawker Hunter and was watching the display from the ground, hoping Andy Hill would perform an escape manoeuvre.
The moment the aircraft dropped its nose, we're only talking a space here of a few seconds, then it was all over, and I remember just that sickening feeling. I turned to a friend of mine and said, well, he's dead.
Andy Hill grew up in Kent and served for many years with the RAF. He later worked for British Airways and flew dozens of air displays a year. He was once filmed for an episode of Midsummer Murders. His defence team argued such an experienced pilot would never have made so many mistakes unless his ability to think rationally had been affected by the G-forces involved in the flight.
And why on earth would he do that? A man of his distinction and experience and his skill at flying. There is no rational answer to that other than that he was in some way impaired. If he can be affected like that, who else is going to be affected? A lot more research will have to be done.
Andy Hill only survived to stand trial because his ejector seat semi-activated as the plane hit the road, flinging him out of the wreckage. Today he left court a free man, but says every morning when he wakes up, he has to face the fact that 11 men were killed in the crash.
Well, Amanda joins us now from outside the Old Bailey. And Amanda, as we heard, there were emotional scenes in court today.
Yes, there were gasps and loud sobs in the courtroom as those 11 not guilty verdicts were read out from many of the family members who've been there sitting to the evidence throughout this 7-week trial. The judge said he understood they were upset, but he wanted to thank them for their forbearance and their dignity. As for Sussex Police, well, they say it was a long, complex and unique investigation affecting most members of staff at the force, one of the largest in their history. They say they respect the jury's decision, but they hope the investigation and the trial has answered some of the many questions the families of the victims have.
Amanda,